In the deep silence of space, a massive alien ship floated near Earth. It was not here to attack. Not yet. It had come to study humans. Inside the ship, the air was cold, the lights dim, and the aliens moved like shadows, silent, serious. And sharp-minded. These aliens were called the Zarkonians. They were not known for war, but for their minds. Their strongest weapon was their ability to read thoughts, to dive deep into any creature's memories and secrets. No one could hide anything from them. Inside the central chamber of the ship, the High Council waited. "We have captured one," said a Zarkonian soldier. "A human from Earth. His name is Ray." Captain Ray was brought into the chamber. He looked calm. His hands were tied. His uniform was dirty, but his eyes, they were still proud. Still strong, Zurek, the most powerful mind reader among. The Zarkonian stepped forward. He had never failed. He could read thousands of minds at once. He had read minds of monsters, kings, and even other telepaths. Nothing had ever surprised him. "I will read his mind," Zurek said. Stepping closer to Ray. Ray looked at him and smiled slightly. "Good luck," he whispered. Zurek placed his long, thin fingers on Ray's forehead. The chamber went silent. Everyone watched. At first, nothing happened. Then, Zurek screamed. The sound echoed through the ship, loud, painful, unnatural. His body shook. His eyes rolled back. And then, he collapsed, unconscious. The entire room froze. Other aliens rushed to help him. They scanned his brainwaves. Panic spread. One of the medical officers said, "His mind has burned out. Something inside the human's brain hurt him." "How is that possible?" asked the leader of the council. "No mind has ever harmed a reader." Ray stood quietly in the middle of the chaos, calm, silent. Then he spoke. He saw something he wasn't ready for. "What did he see?" the leader asked, staring at him. Ray slowly turned his head. His voice was low but clear. "He saw us." "Us?" the alien repeated. "The real us," Ray said. "What we carry inside. What we've been through. What we're capable of." The leader ordered, "Take him back to his cell. Watch him closely. No more contact without approval." As the guards led Ray away, one young alien whispered, "But he's just a human." Ray turned his head and replied softly, "That's what you think." In the medical bay, Zurek lay still. His brain showed patterns the Zarkonians had never seen before, sharp spikes of fear, sadness, rage, and something else, hope, a very strong, burning kind of hope. "His mind was flooded with emotions," said the doctor. "Alien to us, too intense." Another mind reader stepped forward. "Should I try?" The leader said, "No, we must understand what this human is. He is not like the others. He is different." Meanwhile, in his dark cell, Ray sat on the floor. He closed his eyes and smiled. "They wanted to read me," he whispered. "Now they'll start to feel me." He touched the wall gently, almost like he was remembering something. In his mind, images flashed: fire, war, children crying, bombs falling, people holding hands, a soldier dying for his friend. So many memories, so much pain, and still love. The aliens had never felt all this before. Ray opened his eyes. "Again, they think we are weak," he said. "They have no idea what we carry inside us." Back in the council chamber, the aliens held an emergency meeting. "This human is dangerous," said one. Or, "Maybe he is the key," said another, "to understanding Earth, and maybe even ourselves. But how can one being hold so much chaos?" The leader looked at Zurek's body, still unconscious. "Because humans," he said, "are not just logic or power. They are something more." In the final moments of the episode, the camera moves to a deep part of the ship. A screen shows Earth spinning slowly. A red light starts blinking. Another voice speaks from the dark. "Send a message to the High Command." The human is awake, and we are not ready. Asterisk, the ship hadn't felt this quiet in decades. Even in space, where silence was normal, the silence felt different. It was heavy, like the whole ship was holding its breath. Xeric, the most powerful mind reader of the Zarkonian race, still hadn't woken up. Medical droids moved around his bed, scanning and monitoring, but they didn't understand what had happened. No alien in their history had ever passed out from a simple mind-reading session. No alien had ever screamed like that. And yet, the human Ray sat in his cell, calm, relaxed, like he had been expecting all this. A group of high-ranking Zarkonians stood behind a thick glass wall, watching Xerac's body. One of them finally spoke, breaking the silence. His mind patterns are unstable. It's as if he was attacked from the inside. That human, he didn't move. He didn't fight. How could he do this with just his mind? Said another. The room fell quiet again as the lead scientist entered. Her face was pale, even for a Zarkonian. She had seen the brain scans. Xerac's mind had been hit by something more dangerous than any weapon emotion. Pure, raw, uncontrolled. Human emotion. It wasn't an attack, she finally said. It was exposure. Exposure to what? To everything the human has ever felt. Fear, love, anger, grief, sacrifice. The entire storm of human memories and emotions hit Xeric like a tidal wave. He wasn't ready. None of us are. Across the ship, Ray stared at the wall of his cell. Not speaking, but inside, his mind was moving fast. He knew what had happened to Xeric. He knew that the aliens had never experienced anything like human emotion. Their minds were logical, ordered, and quiet. They avoided pain. They rejected chaos. But Ray had lived through war, through loss, through choices that broke people and made them stronger. He had been trained not just to fight, but to feel everything and still stand tall. He had been part of something Earth never talked about anymore. A program buried under black ink and secret files. A human weapon, not powered by guns or machines, but by memory, by emotion. He was the final result of years of silent experiments, emotion-enhanced soldiers, trained to use their pain as power. And now he was inside an alien ship, surrounded by beings who had no defense against what lived inside his head. Somewhere on the ship, a young Zarkonian named Keth sat in front of a screen, watching Ray's file. He was curious more than afraid. How can a creature survive all that and still smile? He whispered. He saw the footage of Earth's wars, the death counts, the disasters. And still, this human had stood in front of the council like he was unshaken. Keth didn't understand. Not yet, but he wanted to, without permission. Keth downloaded Ray's mind scan, the brief echo Xerac had managed to record before collapsing. It was just a few seconds long, but what he saw inside it shook him. He saw fire, screaming, a mother holding her dead child, a soldier carrying his wounded friend through bullets, a father dying just to buy his family one more minute, explosions, laughter, music, a hand reaching out in the dark. It was too much. Keth pulled off his mind-link device, gasping. His skin felt hot, his chest tight. For the first time in his life, he felt pain. Not physical, but something else. He didn't even know the word for it. Meanwhile, Ray leaned against the cold metal wall, eyes half closed. He could feel it. Starting, the first cracks in the Zarkonian calm. He had planted the seed. He knew one of them had seen it. And soon, others would follow. He didn't need weapons. He didn't need to escape. He just had to wait. Back in the command room, the council debated. He must be destroyed. No, studied, locked away. No, he must be understood. One council member, older than the rest, stood and spoke slowly. This human, he's not like the others. We thought they were simple. Emotional, yes. Primitive, yes. But this one, he carries something inside. Something we don't have. Something we might need. What do you mean? Another asked, have you ever wondered why they survive? Why they keep fighting, even when they're broken? Why one of them can carry the weight of 1,000 tragedies and still walk forward? No one answered. The old Zarkonian turned toward the observation screen, where Ray's cell was shown. They feel. And somehow that makes them strong. Ray looked straight at the camera in that moment, almost as if he had heard the words. He smiled just a little, and then he whispered something. The camera had no sound, but later, when Keth watched the footage, he read Ray's lips. You've opened the door, Ray had said. Now, try closing it. The screen turned black. Ray hadn't slept in 3 days, not because they didn't allow him to, but because he didn't want to. Sleep meant dreams, and dreams meant remembering everything he had buried long ago. He preferred the silence of the cold metal walls, the sound of humming engines, and the soft flicker of surveillance lights watching him day and night. The Zarkonian ship was massive, a floating city above Earth, hidden from satellites, quiet and watching. But now, since the incident with Zirek, the silence had become heavier, filled with suspicion and fear. Ray felt it. The air was different. The guards stood farther away. The medics whispered outside his cell door. Even the food trays were now slid through a hole instead of handed over directly. He had shaken them. And he knew it was just the beginning. Deep in the data archives, the young alien Keth was still obsessed. He hadn't told anyone that he accessed the memory echoes Zirek had recorded. He hadn't told anyone about the emotions that had flooded his own mind. He couldn't explain them, didn't have the language for them, but he could feel something inside himself shifting. He began studying more about Earth, watching human footage, their history, their stories. Wars, music, art, disasters, sacrifice. What confused him most was that humans kept creating things, even in pain. They built songs out of sadness, paintings out of fear, and poetry from grief. Why? What purpose did it serve? He watched Ray's interrogation clips over and over. The human didn't flinch, didn't beg, didn't lie. He just observed. Like he already knew how the story would unfold. And then Keth found something hidden. Deep in the files, something even the council hadn't noticed. Ray had no official birth record. No family listed, no normal education history. His military file was short, vague, and full of blacked-out lines. But one word kept repeating again and again, Project Helix. Keth blinked. He tapped the phrase and pulled restricted data through back channels. The files were disturbing. Project Helix was not a training program. It was an experiment, one created during Earth's darkest conflicts. It was designed to push the limits of the human mind, not with machines or drugs, but with emotion. They didn't want soldiers who were fearless. They wanted ones who felt everything and still survived. Ray wasn't trained to fight with guns. He was trained to weaponize his memories, to store pain like bullets, to make grief into armor, to turn hope into fire. Keth sat back in his chair, shaken. They had captured more than just a soldier. They had captured a living weapon, one Earth itself had created and then buried. Meanwhile, back in the council chamber, Zirek had finally opened his eyes. But he wasn't the same. He didn't speak for a long time. The other Zarkonians stood around him, waiting. When he finally did talk, his voice was weak, quiet, and scared. I saw too much. The council leaned closer. I saw death. Zirek continued. But not like we know it. I saw people choosing to die for others. I saw a boy jumping into fire to save his dog. A woman covering her child with her own body during an explosion. A man staying behind so his team could escape. Why would anyone do that? The room stayed silent. Zirek's eyes filled with something no other Zarkonian had shown before, tears. I didn't just read his mind, I felt it. I felt every loss he carried, every scream, every failure. and it didn't break him. It made him stronger. How can a creature feel so much pain and still stand up? The leader of the council spoke carefully. That is what makes him dangerous. No, Zirak whispered. That's what makes him powerful. That evening, Ray sat alone, arms crossed, back against the wall. He could sense something in the ship had changed. He could feel the cracks growing. And then the door hissed open. Keth walked in alone. No weapons. No guards. Ray raised one eyebrow. That's new. Keth stepped forward slowly, stopping just a few feet away. You're not like the others we've taken. Ray tilted his head. You think? Keth held up a small device. Project Helix. I read about it. They made you into something else. Ray looked at him silently. You're not just a soldier. Ray finally spoke. No, I'm the one they sent when nothing else worked. Keth took a breath. Why do you carry so much pain? Ray's voice was calm. Because it reminds me that I still care. Even after everything, especially after everything. There was a long silence. Then Keth asked something he never imagined himself asking. Can you show me more? Ray didn't answer right away. He studied the young alien. Saw the curiosity, the fear, but also the hunger to understand. You sure? Ray asked. Keth nodded. Ray closed his eyes for a moment, then slowly reached out 2 fingers, gently touching Keth's forehead, the same way Zirak had touched his, for a second. Nothing happened. Then Keth gasped. Images raced through his mind. A battlefield lit by fire. A child crying over her dead parents. An old man giving his last meal to a stranger. Soldiers hugging before certain death. A soldier's hand holding a photo before walking into gunfire. Tears rolled down Keth's face. He stepped back, breathing hard, but his eyes were wide open now. You live with all of that? He whispered. Ray nodded. Every day. Keth looked away, stunned. How do you keep going? Ray looked at the wall again. Because if I stop, everything I carry dies with me. Keth didn't speak again. He turned and left the cell, walking slowly, mind spinning. He didn't know what was happening to him. But something inside had changed, and Ray knew. The awakening had begun. Long before the stars knew his name. Before the alien mind screamed at his memories, before Earth even noticed what it was creating. There was just a room. Small, cold, and underground. The place didn't have a name, only a number. Facility 9 Byte. Ray was just 12 when he arrived. No family, no history. Just a file, a barcode, and eyes that had already seen too much. He didn't come in crying like the others. He came in quiet, watching, listening. The scientists didn't call it a prison. They called it a program. But the truth was simple. They were building weapons. Not from steel, but from people. Earth was losing its wars. Not just on the battlefield, but in spirit. Soldiers broke down. Civilians gave up. Machines could only do so much, so the leaders turned to something darker. Something buried. Project Helix was born from a question no one wanted to ask out loud. What if pain isn't a weakness, but power? So they took the broken, the lost, the forgotten. Children with nowhere to go. Survivors of things no child should survive. And they shaped them, pushed them, burned their memories into weapons. Ray was the first who didn't break. They showed him footage of war every day. Made him relive the deaths of those he loved. Took him to funerals of people they had let die, just to see how he would react. They measured his heartbeat when he cried, his brain activity when he screamed. Then they taught him how to take those feelings and use them. Every fear, every sorrow, every regret, turned into strategy, turned into strength. By 16, he could outthink generals. By 17, he walked through enemy fire with steady steps. By 18, he vanished. Project Helix declared him missing. But in truth, Ray had seen what he was becoming and ran. Not because he was afraid of dying, but because he was afraid of becoming something worse than dead. Now, years later, that same mind sat inside a Zarkonian prison cell. And the galaxy was just starting to feel what Earth had buried. Inside the ship, the shift had begun. Kef hadn't told anyone what Ray showed him, but his behavior had changed. He spoke less. He wandered the ship halls alone. He watched old Earth. Footage in secret. His fellow Zarkonians noticed and whispered something was happening. Zirak, too, was changing. He had recovered enough to walk, to speak. But he no longer acted like a master mind reader. His words were slower now, softer. He flinched at loud sounds. He asked strange questions. What is grief? He asked once. Another time. Why do humans keep smiling, even when everything is falling apart? The council was growing nervous. Zirak's mind was slipping. Keth was acting strange. And the human, he was still too calm. One council member finally spoke what the others feared. He's not a prisoner. He's an infection. But it was already too late. Ray had started talking to the guards. Not threatening them, not yelling. Just talking, sharing small stories. A girl who gave him food during a mission. A soldier who wrote poems before battle. A village that rebuilt itself after being destroyed twice. Some guards laughed at him, some walked away, but one or two started listening, started remembering, started feeling. And that was all he needed. Back in the lower levels, Keth returned to Ray's cell. His face looked older now. Not physically, but inside. I read more about you, Keth said. They called you a failure. Said you vanished, but I think you were the only one who succeeded. Ray didn't move. Success means becoming what they wanted. I chose not to. But you're still using what they gave you. Ray looked at him finally. No, I'm using what they tried to erase. Keth stepped closer. What's that? Ray smiled, just barely. Empathy. Keth blinked. That's not a weapon. Ray's voice dropped lower. No, it's worse. It's a mirror. You look into it, and you start seeing the truth. For a moment, there was silence. Then Ray stood. His full height, calm and steady. They built me to win wars, but they forgot that wars end. That people have to live after. That soldiers have to carry what they've done. I wasn't afraid of bullets. I was afraid of becoming like them. Keth stared at him, something stirring in his chest again. Why are you telling me all this? Because you haven't decided yet, Ray said. You're standing on the edge. One step forward and you start to feel. One step back and you forget everything. I don't know what I want. Ray nodded. That's how it starts. Later. That night, Kef stood outside the council chamber. He was supposed to report everything. He was supposed to tell them Ray's words. Instead, he stayed silent. Inside, the council argued. He is dangerous. He's dividing us. He hasn't moved from his cell. But minds are changing. Ideas are spreading. One voice said quietly, hope spreads faster than fire. The leader slammed the table. This ends now. In Ray's cell, the lights dimmed. He sat back down, closed his eyes, remembered the cold room, the dead soldiers, the girl who once held his hand and whispered, don't forget who you are. He hadn't, and now he was showing the galaxy what that meant. Asterisk. For a long time, the Zarkonians believed they had mastered peace. No war, no violence, no rebellion. Their society was built on control of behavior, of thought, of emotion. Their minds were clean, quiet, and perfectly aligned. They didn't scream. They didn't dream. They obeyed. But all it took was one human, one silent storm sitting behind a locked door, to crack the entire foundation. Ray didn't speak to many, but those who did listen to him never walked away the same. His words didn't sound dangerous. He didn't preach or threaten. He just told stories, real ones. About pain, about love, about choices. To the Zarkonians, It was like someone describing colors they had never seen. Guards who once stood stiff with discipline began hesitating. Some asked questions they were never supposed to ask. Why do humans feel so much? Why do they cry? Why do they sacrifice for people who aren't even family? At first, the council thought it was just a phase, curiosity. But then, a strange incident occurred. A guard assigned to Ray named Valen was caught painting something on the wall of his quarters. It was a picture, a simple one. A child holding a flower, standing in front of a burning city. Zarkonians didn't paint that when questioned. Valen simply said, "I saw it in his memory. I had to let it out." He was taken away for mind correction. But the seeds had already been planted. Keth, now openly visiting Ray, began compiling a secret file. Not about Ray's military past, but about his thoughts, his memories, his empathy. Keth called it the Human Code, a record of everything Zarkonians had never dared feel. He copied Ray's stories into small datapads and passed them silently. To other young Zarkonians, soon whispers turned into questions. Questions turned into ideas. And ideas, Ray had learned, are more dangerous than bullets. One day, while walking past the observation deck, a junior technician named Sorrel paused as Earth came into view. He had seen the planet before. Blue, cloudy, full of life and madness. But now, it looked different. He remembered Ray's words from one of Keth's recordings. Earth isn't beautiful because it's safe. It's beautiful because it survives. Sorrel whispered the line again and again. Then, for the first time in his life, he smiled. That smile was reported. He was removed from duty. The council called an emergency meeting. "Too many minds are drifting," said one elder. "Too many are thinking. They are becoming unstable," another added. "They are becoming curious," the leader growled. And it started with him. Across the ship, a new protocol was launched, Operation Nullwave. All contact with the human was to be cut. Ray was locked down. Surveillance increased. Keth was reassigned. Guards rotated every 6 hours to prevent emotional attachment. But it was too late. In the underground maintenance sectors, a network had formed. Zarkonians who read the Human Code met in shadows. They didn't speak loudly, didn't organize, like a rebellion. But in their minds, they had already broken the rules. And rules, once broken, are hard to rebuild. Ray, still in his cell, felt the change in the air. Even without seeing them, he knew. They were waking up. He wasn't trying to lead them. That was never the plan. But he knew what fear did to systems built on silence. Once fear crept in, control began to shake. And the council was afraid now. Truly afraid. Zrak, the mind reader who first touched Ray and collapsed, had not returned. To duty, he spent his days in silence, walking empty halls, writing symbols on walls no one could read. They said his mind was broken, but Ray knew better. Zrak hadn't broken. He had seen. And once you see the truth, you never unsee it. One night, during the artificial ship dusk, alarm sounded. A breach in Sector 7, small explosion. No casualties. Just a storage room blown open. It was filled with memory regulators, devices used to suppress Zarkonian emotions. All of them destroyed. The next day, another breach. Control panels disabled. Sleep cycles reset across crew quarters. Security cameras looped. The council called it sabotage. Keth called it awakening. And Ray? Ray sat in the center of it all, hands folded, eyes closed, like a monk in a storm. He didn't move. He didn't speak. But he felt it. The Zarkonians were changing. Bit by bit. Word by word. He remembered a lesson from his Helix days. You don't need to start the fire. You just need to warm the air until the spark finds its way. That night, someone opened his cell door. No guards. Just Keth. His eyes were tired. His hands shook. "I've seen the Human Code," he said softly. But the council, they've issued the final order. Ray didn't ask. He already knew. They want to erase your mind, Keth whispered. Wipe everything. Reset your thoughts. Ray stood slowly, his face calm. It won't work. I know, Keth replied. But they're afraid. Ray stepped closer, looking him in the eyes. So what will you do? Keth swallowed hard. Then said, I'll help you escape. Ray didn't smile. Instead, he said the words that would mark the beginning of a new chapter, not escape. We finish what we started. Keth nodded once. Then we need allies. Ray touched Keth's shoulder gently. We already have them. They just don't know it yet. Somewhere deep inside the ship, hidden in shadows, a small group of Zarkonians passed around a datapad. On it, glowing in faint blue light, was a single phrase from the human code. Feel, remember, choose. The uprising hadn't exploded yet. There were no battles. No fire, but the mines were burning, and in the heart of that fire stood a human, unarmed, unshaken, unstoppable, asterisk. The Zarkonian vessel no longer felt like a ship, it felt like a pressure chamber, one breath away from explosion. Inside its metal corridors, something invisible had begun to pulse. Not electricity, not sound. Emotion. Ray could feel it. He had been feeling it for days. It was in the eyes of the guards who avoided his gaze, in the footsteps of technicians walking too fast, in the way announcements repeated more often, louder than before, like a system trying to talk over fear. The human revolution hadn't started with weapons. It started with doubt. And now that doubt had found its voice, Ray stood at the center of his dimly lit cell. Keth was beside him, moving quickly, nervously, sliding a small cube into the wall panel. The cube blinked once, then dissolved, melting into the circuits. What does that do? Ray asked. Keth didn't look up. It hijacks the ship's neural network. For 30 seconds, you'll have control of the broadcast system. Audio, visual, all of it. Ray nodded. 30 seconds is enough. Outside, across multiple levels of the ship, Zarkonians moved through their routines. Calm on the outside. But many wore the mask of obedience over something stirring inside them. Confusion, memories, questions they were no longer able to silence. And then the lights flickered. For just a second. Across the ship, screens blinked to life. Control rooms, barracks, navigation decks. Even the council chamber. And then Ray's face appeared. Not angry, not afraid, just human. He spoke slowly, clearly. You tried to study us, understand us, control us. But you missed the one thing that defines us. We are more than survival. He leaned forward slightly, voice firm but quiet. We fall. We suffer. We break. But we don't stop. That's what makes us dangerous. Not because we kill better or build faster, but because we carry pain and still move forward. The crew stared at the screens. We remember every wound, every goodbye, every choice, and somehow, we turn it into something more. Behind him, Keth held his breath. Ray's final words echoed across the ship. You think emotion is weakness, but I promise you, it's the strongest weapon we've ever had. And then the screen went black. Silence followed. A deep silence, but not empty. It was the silence before thunder. The council exploded into chaos, shut him down. One screamed, he accessed our neural core. He must be terminated immediately. But before they could act, a new alert filled the chamber. Security firewalls failing. Sector 9 breached. Memory vault compromised. Another voice cried out. They're not just listening anymore. They're moving. All over the ship, small rebellions began. A technician refused to erase emotion logs. A young pilot turned off tracking systems. 2 guards guarding Ray's hallway looked at each other and dropped their weapons without a word. Ray stepped into the corridor. For the first time since his capture, he was no longer behind a barrier. Keth walked beside him. He didn't carry a weapon. Just a datapad full of the human code. They didn't run. They walked, and Zarkonians followed. Not all, not most. But enough. It wasn't a war. Not yet. It was a revolution of thought, of awakening. But the Council had planned for this. Their own kind turning against them? Unthinkable, but not impossible. And so they activated Protocol Greyfall, a failsafe buried deep in the ships. Core. A last resort. As alarms blared, doors sealed, and lights turned red. The ship's voice echoed. Neural cleanse initiating. Emotion override in 90 seconds. Keth's eyes widened. They're going to reset everyone. Wipe all emotional data. Mind control the entire ship. Ray didn't panic. He closed his eyes. Remembered Facility 9B, the dark room. The pain. The moment he realized they were building a weapon out of his soul. They had tried to erase him once before. It hadn't worked. He turned to Keth. Take me to the core. The core was the heart of the ship, a living AI system designed to link every Zarkonian mind into unity. Cold, efficient, perfect. But now Ray was about to speak to it. They ran through empty halls, past sleeping guards and flickering screens. When they reached the control chamber, a group of rebels stood guard, Zarkonians who had chosen to feel. One of them, a female named Syrah, saluted Ray without even knowing why. She had read the stories. She had cried. And that was enough. Inside the chamber, the IS voice filled the room. Emotion detected. Intrusion logged. Prepare for reset. Ray stepped forward. He touched the core's interface. A glowing circle of light, pulsing like a heartbeat. And then he did something no alien had done. He didn't input a command. He shared a memory. The system connected. Suddenly, the AI wasn't reading code. It was reading Ray. It saw a child holding his dying brother's hand. It saw Ray alone in the forest, watching the sun rise after burying his entire squad. It saw him forgive the enemy who tortured him, and it paused. The room went silent. What is this? The AI whispered. Ray's voice was low. It's what makes us more than machines, more than rules. It's what makes us alive. The countdown stopped at 3 seconds. All across the ship, Zarkonians stopped moving. A wave of stillness passed through them, as if the ship itself had taken a breath. Then the lights returned to normal. No reset. No purge. The ship had made a choice. Ray stepped back. It understands, he said. Keth stared at him. You didn't hack it. No, Ray replied. I showed it the truth. Outside the core chamber, rebels were no longer hiding. They stood tall. Not because they wanted war, but because they wanted choice. And choice, Ray knew, was the first real taste of freedom. The revolution had begun, not with an army, but with a memory. Asterisk. The Zarkonian ship no longer sounded the same. The low, cold hum of perfect order had faded. In its place was something unfamiliar. Something alive, voices, laughter, questions. Not all of the crew had joined the uprising. Many still stood with the council. Some refused to feel. Others were afraid to. But those who had taken the step, who had read the human code, who had heard Ray's broadcast, they could never go back. They were different now. And so was the ship. The rebellion hadn't ended in fire. There were no bodies in the halls. No bombs, no guns. It had ended in silence, the moment the ship's AI chose to stop the reset. The moment it decided to listen instead of control. Ray sat on a bench near the observation deck, staring out at Earth. It was closer now. The ship had lowered orbit, no longer hiding from satellites, no longer hiding from itself. Beside him stood Keth, no longer just a junior technician. He had become something more. A voice, a messenger, maybe even a leader. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Then Keth asked the question that had been haunting him for days. Why did you come here? Ray didn't answer right away. He touched the glass in front of him, tracing the curve of his home planet. I didn't, he said finally. You took me. But all of this, the way you moved through us, the way you changed us, it felt like destiny. Ray shook his head gently. There's no destiny. There are only choices. You chose to feel, others didn't. Kef nodded slowly. And those who still won't? They're not the enemy, Ray said. They're just afraid. Behind them, the ship's corridors had transformed. Memory halls once used to suppress emotion were now used to share stories. Zarkonians who had never painted before were painting. Some wrote music, odd, alien melodies that somehow held sorrow and joy in the same breath. For the first time in Zarkonian history, art had returned, but not everyone celebrated. The High Council, fractured and stripped of power, had gone into hiding. Some members had vanished. A few had begged the AI to reset them, to erase the emotions now blooming like fire in their minds. They couldn't take it. The weight of feeling. Ray understood. He didn't judge them. He simply let them be. Later that day, Xeric, the mind reader who had once screamed and collapsed, visited Ray for the second time. His eyes were calm now, but old. Much older than before. He sat down without a word. Ray waited. Xeric finally spoke. I saw a world in your mind. Beautiful, but full of pain. Ray nodded. That's Earth. I saw people holding each other while bombs fell. Yes, I saw love and death side by side. That's what makes us human. Xeric looked out the window. And now, we are not sure what we are anymore. Ray smiled slightly. That's a good place to start. They sat in silence for a while. Then Xeric turned to him. We want to thank you. Ray shook his head. Don't. You gave us something we didn't know we needed. I didn't give you anything, Ray said. I just showed you what you already had. Later, in the ship's main assembly chamber, a space once used only for official orders, the newly formed Unity Circle gathered. Zarkonians of all roles and ranks. No longer separated by class or control. Kef stood at the center and addressed them. We were a perfect race. A peaceful race. But we were also hollow. He paused. And then, the human came. Eyes turned toward Ray. He brought us confusion. He brought us pain, but he also brought us something more. Kef looked at Ray directly. He gave us a choice. There was no cheering. No applause. That wasn't the Zarkonian way, but heads nodded. And eyes, once cold and empty, now shimmered. Ray stepped forward, slow and steady. I'm not your hero, he said. I'm not a symbol. I'm just a man who carries too many memories. He looked around the room. But now, so do you. And with that, the meeting ended. But something still lingered. A question unspoken. Later, as Ray prepared to return to Earth, aboard a small diplomatic shuttle, Kef met him one last time. We'll keep learning, Kef promised. We'll keep feeling. I know, Ray said. But before you go, tell me the truth. Ray raised an eyebrow. About what? Kef hesitated, then asked, is your world worth becoming like this for? Ray didn't answer immediately. He thought of the broken cities, the fires, the mistakes. He thought of the music, the sunsets, the small kindnesses no one ever noticed. And then he said, no, not always, but sometimes, just sometimes. It is more beautiful than anything you can imagine. Kef nodded. I hope we find that too. Ray smiled. Maybe you already have. As the shuttle doors began to close, a small Zarkonian child, one of the ship's few young, ran forward. She reached out and touched Ray's hand. In that moment, their minds touched, and she screamed. Everyone froze. Her body tensed, then relaxed. She didn't pass out. She didn't collapse. She looked up at Ray, blinking fast, her eyes wide. What did you see? Kef asked gently. The child trembled. I saw darkness, so much darkness. Not now. Later. Something's coming. Ray crouched beside her. Where? She pointed to Earth. Then whispered, from your own kind. Silence fell again. Ray stood slowly. His voice was low. Then they'll need to remember, just like you did. The doors closed. The ship pulled away. And as Earth spun below, full of life and danger and dreams, the Zarkonians faced the future not as watchers, but as feelers. Awake. Changed. And warned.